Well, hi there. If you're new, welcome to my channel. If you're returning, welcome back. I'm glad you're enjoying this journey. I'm Nas and I'm a bookworm. Now, today, what are we doing? Well, we're going to master English short stories. We're not just going to read, we're going to investigate. We're also going to discuss less common words, phrases, idiomatic language. Now, who said this? When you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. Would you like a hint? His initials are S.H. Did you say Sherlock Holmes? Fantastic. But do you know which book or short story he said it in? It was The Sign of Four, and that's one of the short stories we haven't covered yet. I'm reading all of these for the first time with you, and I am having an absolute blast. Now, I have a challenge for you. You're not Sherlock Holmes, but I want you to play detective today. What do I want you to do? Well, look out for new vocabulary. I'm going to highlight keywords, but I want you to do the same. I want you to really pay attention to vocabulary, idiomatic language, phrases that are slightly uncommon. And I'd also like you to look out for different grammar structures, maybe passive, maybe conditionals, any clever idioms in the story, and of course, hidden clues. Now, at the end of this story, I'm going to ask you the question, could you have solved the mystery before Holmes? And if at any time during the reading you know who did it, then pop your answer in the comments below. Are you ready to open this case file? I know I am. I love reading these stories. So let's just jump right in. The Adventure of the Lion's Mane. And the mane is the hair at the back of the lion, right? So I wonder what on earth a lion's mane has to do with today's story. Well, we'll soon find out, won't we? It is a most singular thing that a problem which was certainly as abstruse and unusual as any which I have faced in my long professional career should have come to me after my retirement, and be brought, as it were, to my very door. It occurred after my withdrawal to my little Sussex home, when I had given myself up entirely to that soothing life of nature for which I had so often yearned during the long years spent amid the gloom of London. So he is in retirement, and have you noticed something really unusual here? This story is not being told by Watson, is it? It's being told by Sherlock Holmes himself, one of the very few short stories actually told by Sherlock. So, at this period of my life, the good Watson had passed almost beyond my ken. An occasional weekend visit was the most that I ever saw of him. They kind of lost touch with each other. Thus, I must act as my own chronicler. So I have to write my own chronicles, my own stories. I have to be my own author. Ah, had he but been with me, how much he might have made of so wonderful a happening, and of my eventual triumph against every difficulty. So we know he solves this case, as he always does. Now, let's just look at some vocabulary here. It is a most singular thing, and here it means unique, okay, or remarkable, exceptionally good, singular. And abstruse is obscure, difficult to understand. And he yearned for something. Oh, when you yearn for something, you want it deeply. You have an intense longing for it. And the gloom of London, of course, it's dreary gloom. It's dark, shady, rainy, miserable. It's not all sunshine and, daisies and No, it's gloom. And Watson had passed almost beyond my ken. I hardly ever saw him. So your ken could be your knowledge, um, or to know. Okay, so I no longer knew him. So here you can see in Scottish and Northern English, do you ken anyone? Do you know anyone? This one's an interesting one, right? As it is, however, I must needs tell my tale in my own plain way, showing by my words each step upon the difficult road which lay before me as I searched for the mystery of the lion's mane. My villa is situated upon the southern slope of the Downs, commanding a great view of the Channel. Downs, it's not up and down, it's not even depressed, it means a county. At this point, the coastline is entirely of chalk cliffs, which can only be descended by a single long tortuous path, which is steep and slippery. At the bottom of the path lie 100 yards of pebbles and shingle, even when the tide is at full, so when it's full tide, high tide. Here and there, however, there are curves and hollows, which make splendid swimming pools, full of fresh with each flow. So each time the tide comes in, it fills these pools with fresh water. This admirable beach extends for some miles in every direction, save only at one point, except save, where the little cove and village of Fulworth break the line. My house is lonely. I, my old housekeeper, and my bees have the estate all to ourselves. Half a mile off, however, is Harold Stuckert's well-known coaching establishment, The Gables, quite a large place, which contains some score of young fellows preparing for various professions. With a staff of several masters, Stackhurst himself was a well-known rowing blue in his day and an excellent all-round scholar. So he used to row canoes, I think, maybe kayaks. He and I were always friendly from the day I came to the coast, and he was the one man who was on such terms with me that we could drop in on each other in the evenings without an invitation. So they got along really well. They had a very comfortable relationship. They could just drop in on each other, very informal, very casual. Now, towards the end of July 1907, there was a severe gale. A gale is like a storm, a tempest. The wind blowing up channel, heaping the seas to the base of the cliffs and leaving a lagoon at the turn of the tide. On the morning of which I speak, the wind had abated, died down. Okay, so let's take a look. Abated. So it became less intense, abated. And all nature was newly washed and fresh. That's what happens after a storm. It feels like everything is clean, like nature has gone through a car wash and it's all clean and sparkly. I love storms. I think storms just wash away all the old, dead, bad, stagnant energy. I love a good storm. Do you? Let me know in the comments. It was impossible to work upon so delightful a day, and I strolled out before breakfast to enjoy the exquisite air. I walked along the cliff path, which led to the steep descent to the beach. As I walked, I heard a shout behind me, and there was Harold Stockhurst waving his hand in cheery greeting. "What a morning, Mr. Holmes! I thought I should see you out. I thought you would be out for a walk." "Going for a swim, I see." "At your old tricks again," he laughed, patting his bulging pocket. "Yes, Macpherson started early, and I expect I may find him there." Fitzroy Macpherson was the science master, a fine, upstanding young fellow whose life had been crippled by heart trouble following Rheumatic fever, how sad. An upstanding citizen is someone who is honest, respectable. People in the community admire such a person. He was a natural athlete, however, and excelled in every game, which did not throw too great a strain upon him. Summer and winter he went for his swim, and as I am a swimmer myself, I have often joined him. At this moment we saw the man himself. His head showed above the edge of the cliff where the path ends. Then his whole figure appeared at the top, staggering like a drunken man. The next instant, he threw up his hands and with a terrible cry fell upon his face. What on earth is going on here? Do you have any guesses or predictions? It almost feels like he had a heart attack. Let's see what happens. Stackhurst and I rushed forward, it may have been 50 yards, and turned him on his back. He was obviously dying. Those glazed, sunken eyes and dreadful livid cheeks could mean nothing else. So his eyes were glazed and sunken, and his cheeks were livid. Livid means angry, so they were probably bright red. And just from observing him, just from outward appearances, just from looking at him, it seemed like he was dying. One glimmer of life came into his face for an instant, and he uttered 2 or 3 words with an eager air of warning. They were slurred and indistinct, but to my ear the last of them, which burst in a shriek from his lips, were, "The lion's mane!" What has the lion's mane got to do with a man who's dying after a swim? Well, I agree with Sherlock Holmes. It was utterly irrelevant and unintelligible. And yet I could twist the sound into no other sense. Then he half raised himself from the ground, threw his arms into the air, and fell forward on his side. He was dead. Are you as surprised as I am by this? My companion was paralyzed by the sudden horror of it, and I, as may well be imagined, had every sense on the alert. And I had need, for it was speedily evident that we were in the presence of an extraordinary case. The man was dressed only in his Burberry overcoat, his trousers, and an unlaced pair of canvas shoes. As he fell over, his Burberry, which had been simply thrown round his shoulders, slipped off, exposing his trunk. His trunk means his torso, his chest, not a trunk like luggage, which we had in one of the other Sherlock Holmes stories. This is why it's really important to read words in context in a sentence. We stared at it in amazement, his chest. His back was covered with dark red lines, as though he had been terribly flogged by a thin wire scourge. So flogging is when you are whipped. Okay, let's just check. To beat someone with a whip or a stick as a punishment. My English is pretty good, right? And what's a scourge? Something wiry, so a whip used as an instrument of punishment. The instrument with which this punishment had been inflicted was clearly flexible, for the long, angry wheels curved round his shoulders and ribs. So wheels are cuts. So these deep, swollen cuts, these blows, okay, curved around his shoulders and his ribs. So obviously the whip was flexible. There was blood dripping down his chin, for he had bitten through his lower lip in the paroxysm of his agony. So what do you think This means paroxysm. What a difficult word to pronounce. It was in the sudden attack, this deep emotion of his agony. His drawn and distorted face told how terrible that agony had been. So a face is drawn, it's tight, it's stiff, distorted by emotion. So really ugly, distorted, pulled, twisted, out of shape. What on earth do you think has just happened here? I have no clue. Absolutely none. So let's keep reading. I was kneeling and Stackhurst standing by the body when a shadow fell across us and we found that Ian Murdoch was by our side. Who's Murdoch? Well, Murdoch was the mathematical coach at the establishment. So he liked mathematics. He was the coach. He had a head for numbers. Nice idiom I'm just throwing in there. A tall, dark, thin man, so taciturn and aloof that none can be said to have been his friend. Not a friendly chappie at all. He seemed to live in some high, abstract region of surds and conic sections with little to connect him with ordinary life. I have no idea what surds are, so I'm going to check. Mathematics, irrational, okay, and conic sections of a cone, so probably all to do with mathematics. So he wasn't really connected to ordinary life. Very often mathematical geniuses have this problem. They live in their heads. So yeah, they have a head for numbers and then they live in their heads. They have no connection to reality, to ordinary life. It's all very mundane, ordinary, stupid for them. They don't like it. He was looked upon as an oddity by his students, an oddity, strange, and would have been their butt, the butt of their jokes. So they would have made fun of him. Okay, let's see. Well, they don't have it here, but the butt comes from butt of their jokes. So the object of their jokes, making fun of him. But there was some strange, outlandish blood in the man, which showed itself not only in his coal black eyes and swarthy face, but also in occasional outbreaks of temper, which can only be described as ferocious. On one occasion, being plagued by a little dog belonging to Macpherson, he had caught the creature up and hurled it through the plate glass window, an action for which Stackhurst would certainly have given him his dismissal had he not been a very valuable teacher. So when a dog annoyed him, he threw it through a window, and he would have been fired except that he was just so good at his job. Such was the strange, complex man who now appeared beside us. He seemed to be honestly shocked at the sight before him, though the incident of the dog may show that there was no great sympathy between the dead man and himself. Poor fellow, what can I do? How can I help? Were you with him? Can you tell us what happened? No, I was late this morning. I was not on the beach at all. I have come straight from the Gables. What can I do? You can hurry to the police station at Fulworth. Report the matter at once. Without a word, he made off. He left at top speed, really fast, and I proceeded to take the matter in hand while Stackhurst, dazed at this tragedy, remained by the body. My first task naturally was to note who was on the beach. From the top of the path, I could see the whole sweep of it, and it was absolutely deserted, save that 2 or 3 dark figures could be seen far away, moving towards the village of Fulworth. Having satisfied myself upon this point, I walked slowly down the path. There was clay or soft marl mixed with the chalk, and every here and there I saw the same footstep, both ascending and descending. No one else had gone down to the beach by this track that morning. At one place, I observed the print of an open hand with the fingers towards the incline. This could only mean that poor Macpherson had fallen as he ascended. There were rounded depressions too, which suggested that he had come down upon his knees more than once. At the bottom of the path was the considerable lagoon left by the retreating tide. So now it's low tide, and I'm just curious, what's marl? Sedimentary rock, soil consisting of clay and lime, used as fertilizer. Good to know. At the side of it, Macpherson had undressed, for there lay his towel on a rock. It was folded and dry, so that it would seem that after all he had never entered the water. Once or twice, as I hunted round amid the hard shingle, the rock, I came on little patches of sand where the print of his canvas shoe and also of his naked foot could be seen. The latter fact proved that he had made all ready to bathe, though the towel indicated that he had not actually done so. So here bathe means to swim. So all the evidence points to the fact that he was ready to go swimming, but the dry towel indicates that he hadn't actually gone swimming. And here was the problem clearly defined. Well, for Sherlock Holmes, it's not clearly defined for me. Is it for you? Yeah? Okay, let's see. A stranger one as had ever confronted me. The man had not been on the beach more than a quarter of an hour at the most. Stackhurst had followed him from the Gables, so there could be no doubt about that. He had gone to bathe and had stripped, as the naked footsteps showed, so he wasn't wearing any shoes. Naked footsteps, footsteps without shoes. Then he had suddenly huddled on his clothes again. They were all disheveled and unfastened, so he hadn't put them on carefully, and he had returned without bathing, or at any rate without drying himself, because, yes, the towel was still dry. And the reason for his change of purpose had been that he had been scourged in some savage, inhuman fashion way, tortured until he bit his lip through in his agony and was left with only strength enough to crawl away and to die. Who had done this barbarous deed? Barbarous, barbaric, savage, inhuman. There were, it is true, small grottos and caves in the base of the cliffs, but the low sun shone directly into them, and there was no place for concealment, no place to hide. Conceal, to hide. Then again, there were those distant figures on the beach. They seemed too far away to have been connected with the crime, and the broad lagoon in which Macpherson had intended to bathe lay between him and them, lapping up to the rocks. On the sea, 2 or 3 fishing boats were at no great distance. Their occupants might be examined at our leisure, so they weren't so far away. Maybe, perhaps they could have been involved. We will question them later. There were several roads for inquiry, several different avenues, paths of inquiry. I just replaced roads with avenues and paths, just synonyms for the same thing, okay? Lines of inquiry, but none which led to any very obvious goal. When I at last returned to the body, I found that a little group of wandering folk had gathered round it. Stackhurst was, of course, still there, and Ian Murdoch had just arrived with Anderson, the village constable, a big, ginger-moustached man of the slow, solid Sussex breed, a breed which covers much good sense under a heavy, silent exterior. So Ginger, he has red hair. He listened to everything, took note of all we said, and finally drew me aside. "I'd be glad of your advice, Mr. Holmes. This is a big thing for me to handle, and I'll hear of it from Luz if I go wrong. So this is a big case, and I'll get into a lot of trouble with Luz. I think that might be like the big office if I go wrong, if I mess things up." I advised him to send for his immediate superior and for a doctor, also to allow nothing to be moved and as few fresh footmarks as possible to be made, so cordon off the area, keep people away until they came, so his superior and the doctor. In the meantime, I searched the dead man's pockets. What do you think he finds in there? There were his handkerchief, a large knife, and a small folding card case. From this projected a slip of paper which I unfolded and handed to the constable. There was written on it in a scrawling feminine handwriting. A woman had written this: "I will be there, you may be sure. Maudie." Looks like the dead man had a girlfriend. Ah, that's what Sherlock Holmes thinks. Okay. It read like a love affair, an assignation, though when and where were a blank. We have no idea. The constable replaced it in the card case and returned it with the other things to the pockets of the Burberry. Then, as nothing more suggested itself, I walked back to my house for breakfast, having first arranged that the base of the cliffs should be thoroughly searched. Stackhurst was round in an hour or two to tell me that the body had been removed to the Gables where the inquest would be held. So Stackhurst came by my home, was round in an hour or two. An hour or two later, he came by, and the inquest would be the inquiry, a judicial inquiry. He had brought with him some serious and definite news. As I expected, nothing had been found in the small caves below the cliff, but he had examined the papers in Macpherson's desk, and there were several which showed an intimate correspondence, love letters, with a certain Miss Maud Bellamy of Falworth. We had then established the identity of the writer of the note. "The police have the letters," he explained. "I could not bring them, but there is no doubt that it was a serious love affair. I see no reason, however, to connect it with that horrible happening, the murder, except, indeed, that the lady had made an appointment with him." "But hardly at the bathing pool, which all of you were in the habit of using," I remarked. "He is sure he wanted to meet her for this romantic rendezvous, but at the bathing pool, where all of you were, it's kind of public. I mean, any of you could have seen them." "It is mere chance," said he, "that several of the students were not with Macpherson." Was it mere chance? Stackhurst knit his brows in thought. So, knitted brows, frowning deep in thought. Ian Murdoch held them back. He would insist upon some algebraic demonstration before breakfast. Poor chap. He is dreadfully cut up about it all. If you are cut up about something, you are upset. By the way, algebra, I was terrible at it. I really sucked at it. And I don't know why I had to study it for so many years. I've never used algebra since leaving school. Never. For me, because I don't have a head for numbers. It was an absolute total waste of time. Are you someone who loves algebra? Do you have a head for numbers? Are you a mathematics whiz? Let me know in the comments below. I'm none of those things. I excel at languages. That's my superpower, not mathematics. So let's go back to Ian Murdoch and the mathematical brain. So he's really cut up about it. He's really upset about all of this. But then Sherlock says, and yet I gather, I understand that they were not friends. So he comes to this conclusion, this summation. He's cut up, but I mean, they were not friends. At one time, they were not, but for a year or more, Murdoch has been as near to Macpherson as he could ever be to anyone. He is not of a very sympathetic disposition by nature. So I understand. I seem to remember you telling me about the quarrel over the ill usage of a dog. That blew over all right. So that blew over. They got over it. It wasn't a big thing. It blew over. When something blows over, it's like, pff, ignore it. It's over. It's done. Let's not fixate on it. But left some vindictive feeling, perhaps? Well, if you threw my dog through a glass window, I don't think it would just blow over. So Sherlock is questioning how they just kissed and made up. No, I am sure they were real friends. Well, then we must explore the matter of the girl. Do you know her? Everyone knows her. She is the beauty of the neighborhood. A real beauty, Holmes, who would draw attention everywhere. I knew that Macpherson was attracted by her, but I had no notion that it had gone so far as these letters would seem to indicate. But who is she? She's the daughter of old Tom Bellamy, who owns all the boats and bathing cots at Fulworth. He was a fisherman to start with, but is now a man of some substance. If you're a man or a woman of some substance, you've got some money. He and his son, William, run the business. I don't know what a bathing cot is, though. I'm going to assume it's like, no, it's not a small bed for a child. It's not a camp bed. I'm going to assume it's, what do they call it? A slip where you park your boat. I think it's called a slip. Let me know in the comments if you have another word for it. Shall we walk into Fulworth and see them? On what pretext? I mean, what's our excuse going to be? Oh, we can easily find a pretext. After all, this poor man did not ill-use himself in this outrageous way. Ill-use, punish, torture. This man didn't do this to himself. Some human hand was on the handle of that scourge, of that whip, if indeed it was a scourge which inflicted the injuries. His circle of acquaintances in this lonely place was surely limited. Let us follow it up in every direction, and we can hardly fail to come upon the motive, which in turn should lead us to the criminal. So once we know why, we will know the who. By the way, why do you think he was beaten like this? And who do you think did it? I don't know about you guys, and I am reading this for the first time, but I have a strange feeling that that letter written by this Maudie person was not meant for him, or if it had been meant for him, then someone else was in love with her, and so, well, they didn't just beat him up, they killed him. Do you think it could have been the math guy who was also in love with her? Or do you think maybe the father got angry when he found out because he was a man of substance and this teacher didn't seem to be very well physically, and he was a teacher, not a man of substance, a businessman? I don't know. Who else could it have been? Someone on a boat? The three men walking away, but they were so far away. Okay, well, the only way we can find out is if we keep reading, right? It could have been a pleasant walk across the thyme-scented downs had our minds not been poisoned by the tragedy we had witnessed. The village of Fulworth lies in a hollow, curving in a semicircle round the bay. Behind the old-fashioned hamlet, several modern houses have been built upon the rising ground. It was to one of these that Stackhurst guided me. That's the Haven, as Bellamy called it, the one with the corner tower and slate roof. Not bad. Well done. Not bad for a man who started with nothing. But, by Jove, look at that. The garden gate of the Haven had opened, and a man had emerged. There was no mistaking that tall, angular, straggling figure. It was Ian Murdoch, the mathematician. A moment later, we confronted him upon the road. "Hello," said Stackhurst. The man nodded, gave us a sideways glance from his curious dark eyes, and would have passed us, but his principal pulled him up. "What were you doing there?" he asked. That's what I want to know. Murdoch's face flushed with anger. "I am your subordinate, sir, under your roof. I am not aware that I owe you any account of my private actions. You're only my boss at the school. My private life, mind your own business." Stackhurst's nerves were near the surface after all he had endured. He's at breaking point. Otherwise, perhaps he would have waited. Now he lost his temper completely. "In the circumstances, your answer is pure impertinence, Mr. Murdoch." Oh, impertinence. You want to know what this means, right? So if someone's impertinent, they're disrespectful, they are rude. Impertinence, your rudeness. Lovely word, by the way. Your own question might perhaps come under the same heading. So your question was also impertinent. We can put it under the heading of impertinence and rudeness. I like the way they are sparring this back and forth. I love it. "This is not the first time that I have had to overlook your subordinate ways. It will certainly be the last. You will kindly make fresh arrangements for your future as speedily, as quickly as you can. And if you are insubordinate, you are disrespectful, you are defiant of authority, you are disobedient." And basically, he just fired him. He just fired him. So I think the idiom is he got canned. He got fired. He got canned. I had intended to do so. I have lost today the only person who made the gables habitable. Really? The guy who just died? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think he lost someone else. Who do you think it is? And what do you think happened? He strode off upon his way while Stackhurst with angry eyes stood glaring after him. "Is he not an impossible, intolerable man?" he cried. The one thing that impressed itself forcibly upon my mind was that Mr. Ian Murdoch was taking the first chance to open a path of escape from the scene of the crime. He was running away from the scene of the crime. Suspicion, vague and nebulous. Now, you have heard this word before. Nebulous, in a different way. Nebula? What do you think nebula is? Come on, challenge yourself. Cloudy, clouds, nebula. So nebulous, cloudy. And if we look at vague, cloudy goes with it. So these two words are synonyms. When there's an and, the two words usually mean the same thing. So when you're reading, pay attention to those little clues. So suspicion, vague and nebulous, was now beginning to take outline in my mind. It's becoming clearer. Perhaps the visit to the Bellamy's might throw some further light upon the matter. So if it throws light on the matter, it's giving us more information about the matter. Stackhurst pulled himself together and we went forward to the house. Mr. Bellamy proved to be a middle-aged man with a flaming red beard. He seemed to be in a very angry mood, and his face was as florid as his hair. So, his face is red because his hair is red. So florid complexion, having a red or flushed complexion. No, sir, I do not need any particulars. My son here, indicating a powerful young man with a heavy, sullen face in the corner of the sitting room, is of one mind with me that Mr. Macpherson's attentions to Maud were insulting. Yes, sir, the word marriage was never mentioned, and yet there were letters and meetings, and a great deal more, of which neither of us could approve. She has no mother, and we are her only guardians. We are determined. But the words were taken from his mouth by the appearance of the lady herself. There was no gainsaying that she would have graced any assembly in the world. So I'm going to say that gainsaying would mean exaggeration. Let's see what it means. Yes, there's no denying, there's no contradicting, there's no exaggeration. What a beautiful word. She would have graced any assembly in the world. She would have looked wonderful at any grand event in the world. Who could have imagined that so rare a flower would grow from such a root and in such an atmosphere? Grow from such a root from that father and in such an atmosphere. It's not a very pleasant home, is it? Women have seldom been an attraction to me, for my brain has always governed my heart. This is Sherlock Holmes speaking. But I could not look upon her perfect, clear-cut face, with all the soft freshness of the downlands in her delicate coloring, without realizing that no young man would cross her path unscathed. He would not escape without her having had some effect on him. So, such was the girl who had pushed open the door and stood now, wide-eyed and intense, in front of Harold Stackhurst. "I know already that Fitzroy is dead," she said. "Do not be afraid to tell me the particulars." "This other gentleman of yours let us know the news," explained the father. "There is no reason why my sister should be brought into the matter," growled the younger man. The sister turned a sharp, fierce look upon him. "This is my business, William. Kindly leave me to manage it in my own way. By all accounts, there has been a crime committed. If I can help to show who did it, it is the least I can do for him who is gone. So let me handle this. It's clear that a crime has been committed. He was murdered. And if I can help the police, if I can help this investigation, if I can help them to understand who did it, well, it's the very least that I can do for the dead man." She listened to a short account from my companion with a composed concentration which showed me that she possessed strong character as well as great beauty. So she didn't fall apart, crying, howling, screaming. She remained very composed. Maud Bellamy will always remain in my memory as a most complete and remarkable woman. It seems that she already knew me by sight, for she turned to me at the end. Bring them to justice, Mr. Holmes. You have my sympathy and my help, whoever they may be. It seemed to me that she glanced defiantly at her father and brother as she spoke. Could it have been the two of them? Interesting. Let me know your predictions in the comments. Thank you, said I. I value a woman's instinct in such matters. You used the word they. You think that more than one was concerned? I knew Mr. Macpherson well enough to be aware that he was a brave and a strong man. No single person could ever have inflicted such an outrage upon him. So he was strong. One man couldn't have whipped him and killed him in that manner. Might I have one word with you alone? I tell you, Maud, not to mix yourself up in the matter, cried her father angrily. She looked at me helplessly. What can I do? The whole world will know the facts presently, shortly, so there can be no harm if I discuss them here, said I. I should have preferred privacy. I would have preferred privacy. But if your father will not allow it, he must share the deliberations. He must sit here and listen. Then I spoke of the note which had been found in the dead man's pocket. It is sure to be produced at the inquest. It will show up. It will come to light. It will be used in the trial. May I ask you to throw any light upon it that you can? Could you give me some information about this note? I see no reason for the mystery, she answered. We were engaged to be married, and we only kept it secret because Fitzroy's uncle, who is very old and said to be dying, might have disinherited him if he had married against his wish. There was no other reason. You could have told us, growled Mr. Bellamy. So I would, father, if you had ever shown sympathy. I object to my girl, my daughter, picking up with men outside her own station. So he thinks that this man was socially inferior to him because he's now a man of substance. It was your prejudice against him which prevented us from telling you. That's why we didn't tell you. You didn't think he was good enough. You are prejudiced. As to this appointment, she fumbled in her dress and produced a crumpled note. It was in answer to this. Dearest, the old place on the beach just after sunset on Tuesday. It is the only time I can get away. FM. Tuesday was today, and I had meant to meet him tonight. I turned over the paper. This never came by post. How did you get it? I would rather not answer that question. It has really nothing to do with the matter which you are investigating, but anything which bears upon that, I will most freely answer. So I don't really want to tell you. I don't think it has any bearing on the matter. It's not really important. She was as good as her word, but there was nothing which was helpful in our investigation. So if she was as good as her word, it means she did what she said she would do. She had no reason to think that her fiancé had any hidden enemy, but she admitted that she had several warm admirers. I think this is where the problem is. May I ask if Mr. Ian Murdoch was one of them? She blushed and seemed confused. There was a time when I thought he was, but that was all changed when he understood the relations between Fitzroy and myself. Again, the shadow round the strange man seemed to me to be taking more definite shape. So from vague and nebulous, it now seems more definite. His record must be examined. His rooms must be privately searched. Stackhurst was a willing collaborator, for in his mind also suspicions were forming, so Stackhurst was also suspicious. We returned from our visit to the haven with the hope that one free end of this tangled skein was already in our hands. So the skein, it's a tangled or complicated situation. Okay, skein, tangled. A week passed. The inquest had thrown no light upon the matter and had been adjourned for further evidence. Stackhurst had made discreet inquiry, discreet, quietly done, about his subordinate, that Ian guy, and there had been a superficial search of his room, but without result. Now, superficial seems very surface-like, okay? So it wasn't really examined thoroughly, not deeply, not completely, just a cursory search, a superficial search. Personally, I had gone over the whole ground again, both physically and mentally, but with no new conclusion. So I ruminated on it, I thought about it, I looked at it from various angles. In all my chronicles, the reader will find no case which brought me so completely to the limits of my powers. I was kind of giving up at this point. Even my imagination could conceive no solution to the mystery. And then there came the incident of the dog. Okay, what has the dog got to do with this? If you have any idea, pop it into the comments. Let's keep this rolling. It was my old housekeeper who heard of it first by that strange wireless by which such people collect the news of the countryside. The strange wireless is talking about gossip. In the countryside, people just gossip. It's, on the grapevine. Where did you hear this? I heard it on the grapevine. Gossip. That's a lovely idiom, on the grapevine. Sad story this, sir, about Mr. Macpherson's dog, said she one evening. I do not encourage such conversation, such gossip, but the words arrested grabbed my attention. What of Mr. Macpherson's dog? Dead, sir. Died of grief for its master. Who told you this? Why, sir, everyone is talking of it. It took on terrible and has eaten nothing for a week. Then today, 2 of the young gentlemen from the Gables found it dead, down on the beach, sir, at the very place where its master met his end. His master met his end, died. When you meet your end, die. At the very place. The words stood out clear in my memory. Some dim perception that the matter was vital rose in my mind. There's the strange feeling that these words are important. That the dog should die was after the beautiful, faithful nature of dogs. Okay, that makes sense. Dogs do die of grief. I remember when my grandfather passed away, our dog refused to eat. He just lay at the front door and refused to move. So this is the nature of dogs. Dogs do behave in this way. But in the very place, that's strange. Why should this lonely beach be fatal to it? Was it possible that it also had been sacrificed to some revengeful feud? Was it possible? Yes, the perception was dim, but already something was building up in my mind. In a few minutes, I was on my way to the Gables, where I found Stackhurst in his study. At my request, he sent for Sudbury and Blount, the 2 students who had found the dog. Yes, it lay on the very edge of the pool, said one of them. It must have followed the trail of its dead master. I saw the faithful little creature, an Airedale terrier, laid out upon the mat in the hall. The body was stiff and rigid, the eyes projecting, and the limbs contorted. There was agony in every line of it. From the Gables, I walked down to the bathing pool. The sun had sank, and the shadow of the great cliff lay black across the water, which glimmered dully like a sheet of lead. The place was deserted, and there was no sign of life save for two seabirds circling and screaming overhead. In the fading light, I could dimly make out the little dog's spoor upon the sand round the very rock on which his master's towel had been laying. For a long time I stood in deep meditation while the shadows grew darker around me. My mind was filled with racing thoughts. You have known what it was to be in a nightmare in which you feel that there is some all-important thing for which you search and which you know is there, though it remains forever just beyond your reach. That was how I felt that evening as I stood alone by that place of death. Then at last I turned and walked slowly homeward. There's something here, there's something here. I know there's something important here, but I don't know what it is. There's some kind of connection. What is it? If you know what to do. Pop it in the comments. I had just reached the top of the path when it came to me, when I realized, like a flash, I remembered the thing for which I had so eagerly and vainly grasped. You will know, or Watson has written in vain, that I hold a vast store of out-of-the-way knowledge without scientific system, but very available for my needs of work. Like I have this huge memory bank. My mind is like a crowded box room with packets of all sorts stowed away therein, so many that I may well have but a vague perception of what was there. There's so much in my mind, sometimes I don't even know what's in my mind. I had known that there was something which might bear upon this matter. There was something here connected to this matter. It was still vague, but at least I knew how I could make it clear. It was monstrous, incredible, and yet it was always a possibility. I would test it to the full. There is a great garret in my little house which is stuffed with books. So what's a garret? A top floor attic room, small one, and it's got books. It was into this that I plunged and rummaged around for an hour. You can hear it in the word, rummage, searching. At the end of that time, I emerged with a little chocolate and silver volume, a book. Eagerly, I turned up the chapter of which I had a dim remembrance. Yes, it was indeed a far-fetched and unlikely idea, and yet I could not be at rest. I couldn't rest, I couldn't relax, until I had made sure if it might indeed be so. It was late when I retired, not retirement, but rest, go to sleep, with my mind eagerly awaiting the work of the morrow, tomorrow, the next day. But that work met with an annoying interruption. I had hardly swallowed my early cup of tea and was starting for the beach, going to the beach, when I had a call from Inspector Bardell of the Sussex Constabulary. Constabulary, what a difficult word to say. A steady, solid, bovine man with thoughtful eyes, which looked at me now with a very troubled expression. Bovine is from a cow. Cattle. Bovine. So he looks sluggish or stupid. Uh-oh. Here we go again. Likening people to animals. So he was a bovine man, a stupid man, sluggish in his movements. I know your immense experience, sir, said he. This is quite unofficial, of course, and need go no further, but I am fairly up against it in this Macpherson case. The question is, shall I make an arrest, or shall I not? Meaning Mr. Ian Murdoch? Yes, sir. There is really no one else when you come to think of it. That's the advantage of this solitude. We narrow it down to a very small compass. If he did not do it, then who did? So when we are in this teeny tiny place, there are very few suspects. What have you against him? He had gleaned along the same furrows as I had. There was Murdoch's character and the mystery which seemed to hang round the man. His furious bursts of temper, as shown in the incident with the dog, the fact that he had quarrelled with Macpherson in the past, and there was some reason to think that he might have resented his attentions to Miss Bellamy, so they were rivals for her affection. So this guy had all my points, but no fresh ones, no new ones, save that Murdoch seemed to be making every preparation for departure. What would my position be if I let him slip away with all this evidence against him? The burly, phlegmatic man was sorely troubled in his mind. Burly, big, and phlegmatic, kind of having an unemotional, stolid, calm disposition. Consider, I said, all the essential gaps in your case. On the morning of your crime, he can surely prove an alibi. He had been with his scholars till the last moment. And within a few minutes of Macpherson's appearance, he came upon us from behind. Then bear in mind the absolute impossibility that he could single-handed have inflicted this outrage upon a man quite as strong as himself. Finally, there is this question of the instrument with which these injuries were inflicted. What could it be but a scourge or flexible whip of some kind? Have you examined the marks? I asked. I have seen them, so has the doctor. But I have examined them very carefully with a lens. They have peculiarities. What are they, Mr. Holmes? I stepped to my bureau and brought out an enlarged photograph. This is my method in such cases, I explained. You certainly do things thoroughly, Mr. Holmes. I should hardly be what I am if I did not. Now let us consider this wheel which extends round the right shoulder. Do you observe nothing remarkable? I can't say I do. Surely it is evident that it is unequal in its intensity. There is a dot of extravasated blood here and another there. There are similar indications in this other wheel down here. What can that mean? So extravasated. From the vessel that contains, from the vessel, extravasated. Okay. I have no idea, have you? Perhaps I have, perhaps I haven't. I may be able to say more soon. Anything which will define what made that mark will bring us a long way towards the criminal. When we know what caused that injury, that mark, we'll know who did it. It is, of course, an absurd idea, said the policeman, but if a red-hot net of wire had been laid across the back, then these better-marked points would represent where the meshes crossed each other. Wow, a most ingenious comparison, or shall we say a very stiff cat o' nine tails with some hard knots upon it. By Jove, Mr. Holmes, I think you have hit it. Or there may be some very different cause, Mr. Bartle. But your case is far too weak for an arrest. Maybe we have those last words, the lion's mane, lion, cat, mane. Wow, could it be cat o' nine tails? So that's a very particular type of whip, like multiple whips. I think it was used in the crucifixion of Christ, I'm not sure. Or there's a beautiful book by Dan Brown. I think in Angels and Demons, he whipped himself with cat o' nine tails. I'll try and put an image up here. I have wondered whether Ian, yes, I have considered that, if the second word had borne any resemblance to Murdoch, but it did not. He gave it almost in a shriek. I'm sure that it was Maine. Not Murdoch. Have you no alternative, Mr. Holmes? Perhaps I have, but I do not care to discuss it until there is something more solid to discuss. And when will that be? In an hour, possibly less. The inspector rubbed his chin and looked at me with dubious eyes. I wish I could see what was in your mind, Mr. Holmes. Perhaps it's those fishing boats? No, no, they were too far out. Well then, is it Bellamy and that big son of his? They were not too sweet upon Mr. Macpherson. Sweet upon? Like. So they did not really like him. Could they have done him a mischief? Do someone a mischief? Harm someone? No, no, you won't draw me until I am ready, said I with a smile. Now, Inspector, we each have our own work to do. Perhaps if you were to meet me here at midday. So far we had got where they came, the tremendous interruption which was the beginning of the end. The outer door was flung open. There were blundering footsteps in the passage, and Ian Murdoch staggered into the room, pallid, dishevelled, his clothes in wild disorder, clawing with his bony hands at the furniture to hold himself erect. Brandy, brandy, he gasped, and fell groaning upon the sofa. He was not alone. Behind him came Stackhurst, hatless and panting, almost as distrait as his companion. What on earth is going on here? And distrait would mean distraught. That's what I'm thinking. Oh, distracted. Okay. Absent-minded. Okay. Yes, yes, Brandy, he cried. The man is at his last gasp. It was all I could do to bring him here. He fainted twice upon the way. Half a tumbler of the raw spirit, the brandy, brought about a wondrous change. He pushed himself up on one arm and swung his coat from his shoulders. For God's sake, oil, opium, or morphia, he cried, anything to ease this infernal agony. The inspector and I cried out at the sight. There, crisscrossed upon the man's naked shoulder, was the same strange, reticulated pattern of red, inflamed lines which had been the death mark of Fitzroy Macpherson. The pain was evidently terrible and was more than local, for the sufferer's breathing would stop for a time, his face would turn black, and then with loud gasps he would clap his hand to his heart, while his brow dropped beads of sweat. At any moment he might die. More and more brandy was poured down his throat, each fresh dose bringing him back to life. Pads of cotton wool soaked in salad oil seemed to take the agony from the strange wounds. I think I know what this is. I think something similar happened to me, but I'm going to wait until the end to tell you. But causing death? Wow, this is extreme. Okay, let's keep going. At last, his head fell heavily upon the cushion. Exhausted, nature had taken refuge in its last storehouse of vitality. It was half asleep and half faint, but at least it was ease from pain, so he passed out, his unconscious. To question him had been impossible, but the moment we were assured of his condition, Stackhurst turned upon me. "My God," he cried, "what is it, Holmes? What is it?" "Where did you find him?" "Down on the beach, exactly where poor Miss Macpherson met his end. If this man's heart had been weak as Macpherson's was, he would not be here now. More than once I thought he was gone as I brought him up. It was too far to the Gables, so I made for you. Did you see him on the beach? I was walking on the cliff when I heard his cry. He was at the edge of the water, reeling about like a drunken man. I ran down, threw some clothes about him, and brought him up. For heaven's sake, Holmes, use all the powers you have, and spare no pains to lift the curse from this place, for life is becoming unendurable. Can you, with all your worldwide reputation, do nothing for us?" "I think I can, Stackhurst. Come with me now, and you, Inspector, come along. We will see if we cannot deliver this murderer into your hands." So he saw him on the beach, he ran down, he threw some clothes on him, and he's begging Holmes, "Cure us from this curse." What do you think it is? I think I know. There's only a couple minutes left in this chapter, so by now I should know, and I think it happened to me while I was hiking. Let's see what happens. Leaving the unconscious man in the charge of my housekeeper, the housekeeper would take care of it, we all three went down to the deadly lagoon. On the shingle, there was piled a little heap of towels and clothes left by the stricken man. Slowly, I walked round the edge of the water, my comrades in Indian file behind me. So I think Indian file would be single file. Most of the pool was quite shallow, but under the cliff, where the beach was hollowed out, it was 4 or 5 feet deep. It was to this part that a swimmer would naturally go, for it formed a beautiful, pellucid green pool as clear as crystal. What a beautiful word, pellucid. Translucently clear. Wow, what a beautiful word. A line of rocks lay above it at the base of the cliff, and along this I led the way, peering eagerly into the depths beneath me. I had reached the deepest and stillest pool, and my eyes caught that for which they were searching, and I burst into a shout of triumph. "C'est near, c'est near, behold the lion's mane." The strange object at which I pointed did indeed look like a tangled mass torn from the mane of a lion. It lay upon a rocky shelf some 3 feet under the water, a curious, waving, vibrating, hairy creature with streaks of silver among its yellow tresses. It pulsated with slow, heavy dilation and contraction. "It has done mischief enough. Its day is over," I cried. "Help me, Stackhurst. Let us end the murderer forever." There was a big boulder just above the ledge, and we pushed it until it fell with a tremendous splash into the water. When the ripples had cleared, we saw that it had settled upon the ledge below. One flapping edge of yellow membrane showed that our victim was beneath it. A thick, oily scum oozed out from below the stone and stained the water round, rising slowly to the surface. "Well, this gets me," cried the inspector. "What was it, Mr. Holmes? I'm born and bred in these parts. I grew up here. But I never saw such a thing. It doesn't belong to Sussex." "Just as well for Sussex," I remarked. "It may have been the southwest gale that brought it up. Come back to my house, both of you, and I will give you the terrible experience of one who has good reason to remember his own meeting with the same perils of the sea, the peril, the danger." When we reached my study, we found that Murdoch was so far recovered that he could sit up. He was dazed in mind, and every now and then was shaken by a paroxysm of pain. In broken words, he explained that he had no notion, no idea what had occurred to him, save that terrific pangs had suddenly shot through him, and that it had taken all his fortitude, his strength, to reach the bank of the river, the sandy bank, the edge. "Here is a book," I said, taking up the little volume, which first brought light into what might have been forever dark. So this cleared up our mystery. It is out of doors by the famous observer J.G. Wood. Wood himself very nearly perished from contact with this vile, awful, ugly creature. So he wrote with a very full knowledge. Cynia capillata is the miscreant's, the bad person's full name, or a person who has done something wrong or lawful. So he's referring to the sea creature as a miscreant, a person behaving badly. That's the scientific name. And he can be as dangerous to life as, and far more painful than, the bite of a cobra. Let me briefly explain this extract. If the bather should see a loose roundish mass of tawny membranes and fibers, something like very large handfuls of lion's mane and silver paper, let him beware, for this is the fearful stinger Cynia capillata. It's a little bit like blue bottles, but only worse. I don't know if you've ever seen blue bottles. Sometimes in the Indian Ocean, where I grew up on the east coast of South Africa, you would get blue bottles in the water and they would sting you, but nothing like this. But when I said I thought something similar had happened to me, I wasn't talking about blue bottles. I was talking about hiking and my legs brushed against this plant, which caused these welts and stinging. So let's keep going. Could our sinister acquaintance be more clearly described? He goes on to tell of his own encounter with one when swimming off the coast of Kent. He found that the creature radiated, sent out in a radius, almost invisible filaments to the distance of 50 feet. OMG. 50 feet, that's 14, 15 meters? Wow. And that anyone within that circumference from the deadly center was in danger of death. Even at a distance, the effect upon wood was almost fatal. The multitudinous threads caused light scarlet lines upon the skin, which, on closer examination, resolved into minute dots or pustules, each dot charged, as it were, with a red-hot needle, making its way through the nerves. The local pain was, as he explains, the least part of the exquisite torment. Pangs shot through the chest, causing me to fall as if struck by a bullet. The pulsation would cease, and then the heart would give 6 or 7 leaps, as if it would force its way through the chest. It nearly killed him, although he had only been exposed to it in the disturbed ocean and not in the narrow, calm waters of a bathing pool. So it was even more concentrated here. He says that he could hardly recognize himself afterwards, so white, wrinkled, and shriveled was his face. He gulped down brandy, a whole bottleful, and it seems to have saved his life. There is the book, Inspector. I leave it with you, and you cannot doubt that it contains a full explanation of the tragedy of poor Macpherson. And incidentally exonerates me, remarked Ian Murdoch with a wry smile. I do not blame you, Inspector, nor you, Mr. Holmes, for your suspicions were natural. I feel that on the very eve of my arrest, I have only cleared myself by sharing the fate of my poor friend. No, Mr. Murdoch, I was already upon the track, and I had been out as early as I intended. I might well have saved you from this terrific experience. But how did you know, Mr. Holmes? I am an omnivorous reader with a strangely retentive memory for trifles. So I read a lot. I'm a bookworm. I'm an omnivore. I read everything, a variety of food, plant, animal origin. That's an omnivore. So if I'm an omnivorous reader, I read everything. By the way, I'm not only a bookworm, I am an omnivorous reader. I read everything. And I do have a retentive memory for things that are just not important. Little value, but I love trifles. I love interesting facts. That phrase, the lion's mane, haunted my mind. I knew that I had seen it somewhere in an unexpected context. You have seen that it does describe the creature. I have no doubt that it was floating on the water when Macpherson saw it, and that this phrase was the only one by which he could convey to us a warning as to the creature which had been his death. Then I at least am cleared, said Murdoch, rising slowly to his feet. There are 1 or 2 words of explanation which I should give, for I know the direction in which your inquiries have run. It is true that I love this lady, but from the day when she chose my friend Macpherson, my one desire was to help her to happiness. I was well content to stand aside and act as their go-between. I'm the one who took their letters back and forth. I wanted them to be together. When I found out that she wanted him, I stepped back. What a gentleman. Often I carried their messages, and it was because I was in their confidence and because she was so dear to me that I rushed to tell her of my friend's death before, lest someone should forestall me in a more sudden and heartless manner before I was arrested, or someone stopped me. She would not tell you, sir, of our relations, lest you should disapprove and I might suffer. But with your leave, I must try to get back to the Gables, for my bed will be very welcome. I'm exhausted. And he gives a clear explanation of his situation. Stackhurst held out his hands. Our nerves have all been at concert pitch, screaming, really, said he. Forgive what is past, Murdoch. We shall understand each other better in the future. They passed out together. They left together with their arms linked in a friendly fashion. The inspector remained, staring at me in silence with his ox-like bovine eyes. Well, you've done it, he cried at last. I had read of you, but I never believed it. It's wonderful. I was forced to shake my head. To accept such praise was to lower one's own standards. I was slow at the outset, at the beginning, culpably slow. Had the body been found in the water, I could hardly have missed it. It was the towel which misled me. The poor fellow had never thought to dry himself, and so I in turn was led to believe that he had never been in the water. Why then should the attack of any water creature suggest itself to me? That was where I went astray. The red herring was the dry towel. If you know what a red herring is, pop it in the comments. Well, Inspector, I often ventured to chaff you gentlemen of the police force, but Senior Capilata very nearly avenged. Scotland Yard. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, my beautiful bookworms. Another episode of Sherlock Holmes. If you're still here at the end, pop something in the comments below. We're going to dive into another one next week and every week until we've completed all 52. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I hope you are as well. And on that note, I'm Nas, bookworm, omnivorous reader, and it is ciao for now.